Hello book lovers, and welcome back to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. Today I will be going through the top 10 books that I have read according to Goodreads. Alright, so I have already posted the companion video to this one, so I will go ahead and link that right here, where I go through the 10 worst books I've read according to Goodreads. Now I will be going through the top 10. A little disclaimer, I last year and this year went through and read the 27 volumes of Full Metal Alchemist, and in my top 10, probably 90% of the books that I read are those Full Metal Alchemist volumes. And I also have a couple repeats with like Heartstopper, things like that. So I did not include multiple versions of a series. I just took whichever one was the highest rated in that series, which is often, later in the series, because of course we've weeded out all the people that don't like the series. So you'll probably see a couple second and third or fourth, if not fifth, books in a series in here. I also did not take any books that had less than 200 reviews, and that was only one book, but I did not include that one. But otherwise I have the 10 top. They're not really the 10 top. I think I was on page like 3 or 4 before I got 10 books that were not Full Metal Alchemist. But yeah, here we are. So I will go ahead and start with number 10 and work my way up to number 1. All right, book number 1 is one I unfortunately don't own. I own the prequel, but I'm not going to hold that up. And that is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. This is rated a 4.5 on Goodreads. We follow a young student who's in high school who unfortunately has to witness the killing of her best friend at the hands of an officer who mistook a hairbrush for a gun during a stop. This book follows Star as she kind of tries to continue to live her life, specifically in a primarily white school, dealing with the death of her friend, and dealing with the riots that occur in response to this. She does live in a primarily Black neighborhood, but does commute to a primarily white school. So we kind of see the reaction within the neighborhood where it is primarily Black, as well as the reaction within the school, which is primarily white. And as she tries to kind of balance her reaction in those two different areas. I thought that this story was incredibly moving, incredibly powerful. It's an important story to tell because it is an event that has occurred multiple times in our society. So it's important for people to understand that there are certain biases within that people in power hold, and that those have very negative consequences on those who have less power. I listened to the audiobook of this, as I do with all Angie Thomas books, and always really enjoyed that experience. I really liked following Star as she just kind of tries to figure out how she wants to live her life now, knowing that she is associated with such a large event that has brought about a lot of riots, that has caused a lot of built-up hate to spill out. It kind of discusses like, should you respond to violence with violence, or should you try to be more peaceful about it? And at what point do you need to realize that peaceful actions are just not enough to bring about change? So really enjoyed that book, really think it deserves to be on this list. And if you haven't read these books yet, including the prequel, which is called Concrete Rose, I highly suggest that you check those out. All right, up next we have a TJ Klune book, which is Heart Song. This is the fourth and final book in his Green Creek series, and this has a 4.56 rating on Goodreads. I keep wanting to call it Goodreads. So in this series, we follow Carter. He is the oldest brother, but I'm not going to talk too much about this individual book because obviously it's the last in a series. So each of these books follows a different couple. So this one, like I said, follows Carter. And then we have one following his younger brother, and I forget his name. Then we follow Gordo, who is the witch in this book, and the first one follows Joe and Ox. So in this series, Ox and his brothers are part of a werewolf pack, and they move next door to Ox and his mother. Joe takes an instant liking to Ox, and you can probably guess why, but they are both relatively young at the point, so they develop a friendship, and Ox becomes really close with their family, and eventually finds out that they are werewolves, and kind of just takes part in their werewolf activities like full moons, things like that. Eventually a threat comes to the family. Joe in the past was kidnapped by I think it was another werewolf. There is a villain werewolf and a villain witch in this story that they have to fight throughout, but Joe, when he was really young, was kidnapped and tortured by one of these villains, and that villain seems to be making a reappearance, so the pack needs to work together to try to destroy that villain. Throughout this series, they deal with the consequences of those large battles that they have, as well as the losses that they experience due to those battles. So this book does deal a lot with grief. TJ Klune uses that topic in his books a lot, so he always does an excellent job with it. I really enjoyed the relationships. I will say that the first book is my favorite. One thing, I love TJ Klune, but one thing I have to say is that sometimes his series do seem to become a little bit repetitive, so I often enjoy the first book in a series the most, or his standalones. I think he's a little stronger with that. Of course, I haven't read his most recent Extraordinary series, so I don't know if maybe that's improved, but in the series that I have read so far, that's something I have experienced it with this book as well. So while this one is rated the highest, I would say that book one, Wolf Song, is definitely my favorite. But I do love TJ Klune, and I think this is a really powerful story. So I highly suggest that if you like his other books and haven't tried these out, that you do so. All right, so next we have a cute little, I don't know if this is considered poetry or what it's considered, but it is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Maxey. And this is rated 4.57 on Goodreads. So this book is just mostly pictures. I would say kind of like ink and watercolor maybe, and then it has a few words on it, and it just follows this little boy as he meets with these animals, and they tell him these wonderful things, you know, to make him feel good about himself and good about the world. I remember when I first heard about this, people are like, oh my gosh, this book made me cry, and I was like, you know, that's nice and all, but I mean, I'm not gonna be, that moved by, positivity kind of thing. I need sadness. And then literally I read the first page and I was in tears. I was like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm crying right now and I've only read the first page, but it was just so beautiful, so heartwarming. I'm sure anyone who has talked about this has praised it. So if you're looking for a book to gift someone, I know I gifted this book to my cousin's daughter because I just felt like these are messages that she should hear early in life and continue hearing throughout life. So absolutely 5 out of 5. This book was wonderful and I can see why it is here on the top. I really don't know why anyone would rate this low. So this next book is technically tied with the one I was just talking about because it's also a 4.57, and it is the second book of a series, and it's called The Hanged Man by Katie Edwards. So I have the third book because it came out this year, but I'm gonna have to reread the series because I literally don't remember anything that happened in this book. I don't know what it is. There's something about this series. I'm not saying that it was bad and that I chose to forget it. I remember, enjoying it. But I just, for some reason, cannot remember anything. The first one is called, what is it called? It's over here. The Last Son is what the first one is called, and this is the second book. And we follow a man whose family is descended from Atlantia, I believe, and there's different houses that are based off of the tarot cards, and his was the House of the Sun. And one day his entire family was destroyed except for him. He did experience an extremely traumatic event during that time, and it is discussed a little bit in detail either in the first one or the second one, but it does involve sexual assault. So just a heads up that definitely when it happened, I was like, oh my God, what is happening? So heads up. But otherwise, he is the only member of his family left, and his house is like haunted, so he can't really go to it. But he kind of acts as like someone who can be bought to, I don't know, rough people up, I think is kind of like what he does. And he has his partner, Brand, I think is his name, and the two of them have been connected since childhood. So since he's a member of the higher family, he has like a guardian who is assigned to him, and that's Brand. So they grew up together, and I really love their relationship, so much so that when the main character started a relationship with someone else, I was like, this guy's really great, but why is he not with Brand? And I think a lot of people were wondering that as well because they have such like this incredible relationship. Like they can even like read each other's minds sometimes, I believe. So I'm wondering if, the authors listen to that and will kind of like twist the relationship so that they're together. Kind of hoping he does. But overall, they just get into a bunch of shenanigans with other people with great magical abilities. But yeah, it's been a while since I've read it. But it is a very interesting series from what I remember vibes wise. So I'm definitely hoping to reread it probably next year, and I'll be able to give you better thoughts on it at that time. But I can see why it is here in the top because it is a very interesting concept, and the relationship between our main character and his partner, Brand, not his romantic partner, is really great. All right, moving on to book number 6. So far we've been doing really great. I've pretty much agreed with the books that I have so far. We have a book that is the third in a series again, and that is The Kingsmen by Nora Sekavic. I'm just gonna say. So this is the third book of the Foxhole Court series. The Foxhole Court is the first book, and this is the All for the Game series. And this follows Neil, who is the child of a psychopath. The psychopath works for a organization where he kills people pretty much. He is referred to as the Butcher, I believe. So Neil and his mother run away from his father, but while they are on the run, his mother gets killed by some of his father's men, and he is now on his own. He is a senior in high school at this point, so he goes ahead and enrolls into a small school and joins their XE team. So XE isn't like a real sport, it's just a sport that's, you know, this author made up for this book, but he plays on this team, and one day a college recruiter comes and he's like, "You're gonna come play for us," and Neil's like, "Definitely not, because my father would see me and he would kill me." So Neil has played XE all his life. So this gangster team that's part of another college, which just so happens to be the main opposing team to the team he's joining, is run by that gang or mafia, whatever you want to call it. So that's why he definitely doesn't want to join. But pretty much they kind of force him to join, and he's like, "You know what, fine, whatever. My last life, you know, my last year to live, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna be dead by the end of the year. So I'm gonna do my best for this team, and I'm gonna try to fix all their problems because they're all screwed up." So, you know, this is a messy book. It's self-published. It's one of those ones with a huge fandom. And you know, either you love it or you hate it. It is kind of trash, but it's a great time. And we have a lot of interesting characters. We do have a male-male romance between him and Andrew, who is a very messed up person. He's experienced a lot of trauma in his life, and he's done a lot of bad things. So he's a really interesting character, and their relationship is really interesting, and it's a slow burn. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, this is not the real cover of the books. This is like a special cover that I got. This is kind of like what the original covers look like. But yeah, considering how hardcore the fandom is, it does not surprise me that the third book of the series is on this list. All right, in book number 5, we have the second in a well-beloved duology, and that is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This book got 4.61 stars on rating, and I feel like I didn't say what the Kingsmen got, and it was 4.58. So I'm going to talk about the first one because obviously no spoilers. We follow a group of criminals who all are very skilled in some sort of criminal related area, whether it's stealing or making explosives or shooting, things like that. They are all part of a gang that is run by Kaz Brecker, I believe is his name. And one day they get hired to kind of go into another kingdom to steal a prisoner that kingdom has, because that prisoner has information that their kingdom wants. So we follow them as they go on this journey and just watch their relationships and, you know, get a little bit of background on each of them. They're all really lovable characters. They're all morally gray. There's lots of action. It's a heist story, so it's really complex. And the heist story, there's a second heist story in the second book where they are now on their home territory instead of in another kingdom, but they're also, you know, going against someone who's very familiar with their territory as well. So I did like the first book a little bit better than the second one from what I remember. I can't remember. I haven't read the series for so long, to be completely honest. I think with this one, sometimes there was so much happening that I was just losing track of it. And it's relatively long, so there's a lot going on in this book, and I don't have, you know, the brain capacity for it, but I do have to respect Leigh Bardugo for writing such a complex plot, and the characters that are just so memorable and lovable. It's no surprise that this book is on this list. Six of Crows was actually going to be number 11, so Six of Crows is very much up there despite being the first book in a series. So kudos. All right, up next we have the fourth book in a series that I unfortunately don't own, but it is a lovely series that I enjoyed all of them of, and that is a volume 4 of Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. And this had a 4.67 rating on Goodreads. So this story follows Nick and Charlie. They are in high school in Britain, so I don't know what years they are, but they are kind of placed together in this, I don't know what kind of class it is, but it seems to be kind of like a study hall of sorts where there's a mix of different grades. So Nick is a year older than Charlie, and they become friends, and Charlie joins the rugby team that Nick is on in hopes of being closer to them. And eventually Nick starts to have feelings for Charlie, so he's starting to kind of question his sexuality and look more into that, and eventually they form a relationship. So we follow the two of them as they develop that relationship, as well as their friends, which is, it's just like a happy story, you know. It's one of those books that just make you feel good, though the later series do delve a little bit into eating disorders, so it does get a little darker. So if that is a topic that you can't handle well, that's just something to keep in mind when going into the story. But overall, it's just a story that makes you feel really good, and the TV adaptation was a lot of fun too, so no surprise to see one of those books here. All right, and book number 3 is a book that I actually just finished like yesterday, I think it is. Well, not yesterday from when you're watching this video, obviously. But this is a book that I actually chose for one of my TBR games because it was the highest rated of my unread books, and now it's one of the highest rated of my read books, no surprise, and that is Heaven's Official Blessing by Mo Shang Tong Shui. I apologize if I said that incorrectly, but this follows Shi Lang, I believe is his name. And he was the crown prince of a very prosperous kingdom who ascended to a godhood. When his kingdom fell under attack against the advisement of the other gods, he descended to help in the war and ended up making the war worse. After that, he was thrown from the heavens and became a god of misfortune. He ended up ascending again, but caused a bunch of destruction out of rage, I'm assuming, in the heavens. So he was thrown down again. And now 800 years from like his first ascension, he has ascended a third time. And everyone's like, not this guy again. Why is he here again? So nobody likes him. So he goes to the mortal realm and just makes himself a little shrine. And there he meets Sanglong, who decides to join him on his adventures. We don't really know who Sanglong is until the end of the story, but everyone seems to be kind of like uncertain of him, except for Shilong, who's like, no, he's my friend. You know, we get along really well. So this is a queer story, but there isn't really any romance in this one. But, you know, it was a good time. I enjoyed it. I only ended up giving it 3 stars because it was kind of one of those stories where you're just reading it to kind of give your brain a little bit of a break. You know, you're just having fun, you're laughing, you're watching these two and hoping they get together, things like that. So it was fun. Maybe not like worth being one of the highest rated books, but, you know, at the same time, I can understand why people rated it so highly because it was fun. All right, and book number 2 actually has the same rating as Heaven's Official Blessing at a 4.68, and this is the 3rd book in a trilogy. So I will of course just talk about the first book, but book 3, Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. I gave this book 5 stars. The other ones I think I gave them like 4 and 4.5 stars. This book was definitely the best out of the series. This will kind of rip your heart out and like stomp on it and maybe kick it into the raging ocean or something. it will make you cry. But in the first book, we follow the No Peak clan. We follow the children of this clan who take over the clan at the beginning of this story, and they are on an island that mines jade, and jade gives the people on this island, not all of them, but those of a certain race, I guess you could say. It gives them the ability to fight better. You know, they can move faster, they can deflect bullets, they can jump higher. They can also use jade for healing abilities. And because of this mineral is incredibly coveted among both, you know, clans on this island. There's No Peak and Mountain Clan, as well as people outside of the island who are hoping to use it to strengthen their military might. So in the first book, we focus mostly on a conflict between the two clans. We have the No Peak clan and the Mountain clan, and things have gradually been escalating over the years until pretty much a full-blown war breaks out. In the second and third books, we focus more on outside forces and the impact that they have on the island and the war that's still going on between the clans, how the clans use the outside forces to kind of strengthen themselves against the other clan. So it's highly political. It also has some really great fight scenes in it. The characters are not the most likable, but you get really attached to them. You see their ups, you see their downs. And overall, the world building in this story is just incredible. Fonda Lee did an excellent job with the story. It's a well-beloved trilogy. You know, it's considered a East Asian inspired urban fantasy with a lot of mafia references. So if any of that intrigues you, I know these books are really big and intimidating, but they seem to go by relatively quickly just because the plot is so intriguing, and especially the action scenes will definitely have you hooked. And for the last book, it is a book I do not own, and you probably can guess because I had mentioned it and it has not made an appearance yet. And so the last book coming in at a 4.74 rating is Full Metal Alchemist Volume 27 by Hiromu Arakawa. I apologize if I said that wrong. You're probably tired of me anytime I say a non-Western name. I say I'm sorry if I said that wrong. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But this is a manga series. Volume 27 is the last of it. But we follow the Elric brothers after they perform a alchemy act that is I think it's illegal. Like you should not do it because it's incredibly dangerous. They, after losing their mother, try to use alchemy to bring her back. But with alchemy, it uses the concept of equal exchange. And so when they tried to bring her back, they ended up causing great harm to themselves. We have, I want to say it's Edward is the older one for sure. And then I don't know if the other one's Eric. I can't really remember. I'm just going to call him Eric. But Eric ends up losing his entire body. And Edward ends up losing his leg, I believe. But he exchanges one of his arms for the soul of his brother and binds his brother's soul to an empty suit of armor. So Edward trains to become a military alchemist so that he can have access to the military's resources in hopes of finding a way to restore his and his brother's original bodies. We see them as they go on different adventures, meet different people, overcome different obstacles. We also have a larger plot of that involves the 7 deadly sins, and it's through political corruption that they are preparing for some sort of mass destructive event that has a lot to do with the loss of human life. So the Elric brothers, of course, are teaming up with their friends in hopes of stopping this. This book will make you laugh, it'll make you cry. It's super action-packed as well. The characters are really likable. Overall, the plot keeps you interested throughout the entirety of the series. I think it's one of the most well-beloved mangas. It's like an OG, you know. It's like, that's why I started there, you know, because like it's one of those series that everybody knows about, and for the most part really enjoys. So no surprise that after reading 27 volumes, you're gonna give it 5 stars because the ending is really chef's kiss. All right, guys, so those are the top 10 books that I have read according to Goodreads. Overall, I agree. A lot of those books are all ones that I really enjoyed. Are they my top books? Some of them, yeah. Some of them, no. But I do love them all. But let me know down below what your top rated book is according to Goodreads, and if you agree. But as always, thank you so much for watching my video and supporting my channel, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!